Welcome to the Oracle Scroll. This is a new year, a new decade, and a new beginning. We have a new look and a new sound. So we appreciate you joining us today. I'm Kevin Walder, your host, and I will be joined by guests along the way as we assemble information on how we can make this our best life, how we can create the world we live in. Welcome to episode 52 of the Oracle Scroll. Today we are visiting with Ame Seelow. Ame hails from Whidbey Island and has been a friend and supporter of this channel for some time now. So we appreciate having her come along with us today and explain and share some of her insights. We did have some technical glitches at the beginning of this recording, so we're picking up the conversation as I had asked Ame to describe for us how her work comes through to her and how it benefits her clients and everyone around her, all of humanity. So welcome, Ame. Please enjoy this conversation.
Symptoms or hearing or seeing, and I don't know how it's always going to work. It just, I open up and I allow spirit to come through in whatever forms are going to come through. And what's finally very interesting for me is when I do sessions for people that have contacted me regarding an animal. And then the animal's like, oh, I'm so glad you contacted me because I need to tell you about my person, and it's like the person never would have contacted me for themselves,
Right.
So yes, maybe the animal has like an underlying issue, thus why they contacted me, and I'll tap into that. But oftentimes the animal is like, oh, I'm so glad that, my person contacted you because I need to help them. So it's interesting. Animals are often very much I regard them to our life earth angels. And it's my job often as a healer too, and a medium and an animal communicator, to tell these animals it's not their job to step in and to hold that energy, because it's holding it in their body and it's making them ill. So I have to remind them how to release the energy, oftentimes like we as humans, as healers, have to do and be reminded of. So, as an animal communicator, I find that extremely interesting, how sometimes people are very more open to reading an animal than themselves. So,
Oh, yeah.
it's just interesting how it works.
People are in denial. That's basically what happens, is what I experience
Yes.
anyway. They are the last to notice when something is going haywire. And you're right, I never thought of that, but the animals spend a
Yes.
lot more time with them than most humans, so they are probably in a better
Right.
in a better place to be able to help and get advice for them. So that's good. So
Yeah, it's true.
yeah.
And it's often interesting how when you're working with an animal, the person is just being quiet and listening, and then the animal will give a very specific symptom, or for me sometimes it's a visual video playing of a situation that happened, and therefore it gains the human's acceptance, because there'd be no way that I would know that, right? And it's through the animal's eyes often that I'm seeing the thing or feeling it. Again, it's just opening, it's learning how to open. And my hope in the future here, within hopefully the next couple months, is to offer maybe a development workshop. And it's difficult having the illness that I have, because I have to really play day to day. And I also feel like those that come to me are quite aware of this and are flexible. Otherwise, they wouldn't be alerted to join me in this situation. So I don't know. I don't worry about oh, I need to do this and put it out, and am I ever going to get any response? Sometimes I'll put out feelers to see what kinds of things people are maybe interested in. And I'm sure, Kevin, you do the same thing with this
Right.
group, especially, trying to figure out where people are and what their needs are and what things they want so that we can assist, right?
Hmm.
So for me, again, my other challenge is learning how to just trust in the universe and not worry about a date and a time, and just set it up and let the universe unfold, and trust that those that are aware and are needing will come at that time, and that I will be in the right space at that time to offer it. So
Right.
it's kind of where I am.
Exactly. That's a perfectly understandable. And it is, yeah, you can't predict from one day to the next what's going to be going on. So all you can do is kind of take
Yeah,
an overall view and hope you schedule it for a time that's best. So that's good. Well,
right.
this is a year of big changes for everyone, you included. You're in the middle of a bunch of them.
Oh, yes.
So how does that, I mean, well, as you look at the situation and where you are and what your plans are and what you're doing, and I already know you've had a couple of major setbacks, so it's kind of like so how does your connection and your work,
Rolled it.
how does that come into play? How does that affect and help you get through those difficult times?
Um, just, realizing that these are challenges. Everybody has challenges. They might seem different scenarios, but their challenge is just the same.
Right.
And, it's a taste and a test, basically, of where your faith is, right? So it's like in wallow in the misery and all the hubbub that's going on, or you can choose to rise above it and put yourself in a better place, right? And that's
Right.
difficult, especially when it feels like you are at odds and it's in every direction. But I find that it's kind of like, okay, take a step, take a deep breath, move on, stay focused on what you are wanting to do and not all the distractions that are going on around you. So, yes, having pain, having these things, but are you going to focus on that? Because if you're focusing on that, it's like putting your intent, right, in that. And so, of course, that's what you're feeding.
Mhm.
So it's not to say that I need to deny my issues that I'm having at the moment. There's a difference between denying and accepting and contributing, right?
Right.
So I feel like, yes, this year has been extremely difficult. I've had personally two seizures.
Mm.
That kind of awakened me, and one of my first seizure, actually, I heard a very distinct clear voice say to me, it's time to come off of the Ocrevus was a medication that I was taking for my MS, and I hadn't even thought about coming off of it or anything related to that. But yet it was so clear to me when I was having the actual seizure, and of course I was like, I guess the best way to describe it is like I was floating outside of myself.
Right.
And I came back with that information and I shared that with my practitioners, my doctors, and I have some pretty awesome docs, and they're like, whatever you feel you want to do, Amy, then we're behind you. So that was a real true test. So I got off of that, and then like, I don't know, maybe 3 months later, I had another seizure. And I didn't have a very clear message with that one. But interestingly enough, it took me into this very, very dark space. I want to refer to it almost as like the underworld. I was in a very dark, depressive space. Um, I had basically gotten to the point with my health where I wasn't able to work anymore. I had the seizures happening. We were in a space where it was like, okay, we need to get out of this house. We can't afford to live here anymore. And then the downstairs of where we were getting ready to move into my parents' property where we were before flooded. So, I mean, it's just like one disaster after another. But are you going to focus on the disaster? Or are you going to look at it from a totally different standpoint? So, having that disaster happen, quote unquote, it was a flood. So I looked at it like, you know what? This was a spiritual, physical cleansing of the space. The
Hmm.
water that came in was from the universe outside. I tried saging the space when the individual left, getting ready for us to get ready to move in, and it wasn't enough. So that's kind of how I choose to look at things. I choose to look at things from a totally different perspective now. There's always two sides to the coin. And so are you going to focus on the negative, or are you going to focus on the positive and try to find, the reason why this is happening, and move on, grow and move on. So that's kind of, I think, what I would say, Kevin, as far as like, where is my spiritual practice kind of assisting me in my day-to-day life. That's kind of how I would put it, maybe.
Okay.
um it's challenging, to say the least. It's difficult to find other like souls, but again, in putting yourself in that realm with other, beings that are interested in the same things, you tend to create your tribe, right?
Right.
And then as you're letting go with this new moon, you're letting go of all those individuals and those things that aren't serving you any purpose, any positive purpose anymore. So, I'm very aware of, I refer to myself now as a witch, and I don't care because I feel like, it's such a gray space. I'm not negative. I tend to be more positive, but I also know that in the universe, there has to be balance. In order to have light, you have to have darkness. That doesn't mean you have to participate in the darkness, nor just the light, but you can, be in balance with them both and be
Right.
aware and help assist others and move on. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Okay.
So,
Very well put. Actually, as you were going through there, I'm visualizing tarot cards because that's my job. And um,
yes,
so
which you're
basically,
very good at.
your outlook keeps you in the energy of the Fool. It keeps you centered on now rather than anything front or back. It keeps you right here, right now, and
Right.
that's really good. And you also make use of the Hanged Man, which gives you new perspectives on old situations. And that's how we solve things. That's how we change life. It's when we can get a
Yes.
new perspective. So, okay, interesting. So now, are you able to continue with your outreach work? Are you able to continue working with clients, or
Yes.
okay?
Yes. I do, and I'm grateful for this. I'm able to do a lot long distance, because energy work has no boundaries, right?
Right, right,
So you don't have to physically be in the space of the individual that's being read, as you know, with your tarot cards, and you do such awesome jobs with them. But yeah, so I do prefer on an individual basis. I kind of let the universe tap in and tell me what I need to do. But 9 times out of 10, how it works is that an individual finds out about me from some way, and they contact me through an email, and then they send me photos of what individual they want read, whether it's an animal, themselves. And I really, truly do not want a lot of information. I try to tell people the least amount of info you give me, the better it is for me, because then I don't get my humanness involved,
right.
So I tell people like very general question, like,
Hmm.
I'm concerned about the welfare of my dog's health and their eating habits, or why are they behaving this way, or why is my horse acting this way, or those kinds of things. So that helps me step in and get it from their own perspective. It doesn't give me, it's hard too. This is a challenge because I have been a vet tech, so I know that medical terminology and standpoints and the body and that kind of thing. I'm also a professional ex now, equestrian, so I kind of come in with that knowledge. It's just really interesting, like all the different jobs I've had in my life. It's just really interesting to hear all the different walks of life and
Mhm.
experiences I've had. Helps me to be who I am, if that makes sense. So
Yes.
it gives me a little different perspective, I guess, than maybe others would have. As far as the animal thing, yes, I've always been kind of born with that intuition and connecting with the animals. I just remember my great grandmother cracking up seeing me outside feeding the feral kittens, and her laughing and saying, "Look at Amy out there, chatting with those kitties and talking to them." And, it was just very normal for me.
Right.
More normal, I want to say, communicating with animals and people, right?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
anyway, yeah.
Yep. I
I
understand that.
just do it, it's $2 a minute. I ask people to use PayPal because I find that it's just the simplest way to use it for most people. They just, need your email. It's $2 a minute. They ask for a $40 deposit, which basically reserves your time, Dave, for yourself. And I typically don't do more than like an hour and a half at a time. It
Mm.
just becomes way too much info.
Yeah.
Most people tend to go about an hour.
Wow.
It might be 45 minutes. It just really depends. And I don't charge by the animal. You're basically paying for the time. So
Right.
whatever information comes through during that time that we've set aside is what you're going to hear.
Right.
I can request for certain things, but the universe does what it wants to do. So that's what I have to often remind people is I can request for specific info, but
Hmm.
please understand that the universe is going to send what you need to hear right now, and I really can't control that. So
Very well put.
yeah.
That's something that people don't appreciate is that, sometimes
Right.
the information that comes through is not related at all to what we've originally started talking about. So yeah, but you
Yeah.
still have to pay attention. It's still there for a reason. So
Yeah.
how has your work changed? That's a really broad question. So what I'm trying to find, how has your life situation, how has it tempered the message that you deliver when you are working with a client?
Yeah, I kind of understand where you're coming from. Like, how has it altered, if at all, like
Hmm.
my perspective and how I work, right?
Right.
So yeah, I think it's interesting. I remember when I first kind of came out of the psychic closet, I got a very clear voice that said, "You need to go do this reading at the psychic fair, blah blah blah." And I was freaking because I had literally just finished my Reiki practice, like my training, and I
Hmm.
had, I think, received the third. I hadn't received the master yet, but I was pretty up there, and I was panicking. So I was like, "Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna totally forget like the symbols and the drawings and the words and blah blah blah." And it was just like, "Nope, just trust us. Just say that you're gonna do this and just be there." And it was like, "Okay, and you will need to bring your crystals. That's it." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So and having that first experience and learning to just trust in the universe,
Hmm.
and that to turn what I refer to as the monkey mind off that wants to control, like, how it's going to be, how you're going to do it, all those things. That was kind of the test at the time. So again, even with this illness and making me work differently, again, it's learning trust, right? And that you don't necessarily need all of these outside objects. It's more about intent. That is where the magic is. It's all about your will, your intent, and where your passion is and your desire. So I would say that in having, received and getting this ever changing illness, it's constantly teaching me things. It's constantly teaching me to let go and to trust. Don't try to control. Don't try to plan it all out in your head. Don't try to figure out in 2 months where you're going to be. it is. It's like what you were saying. It's about being the fool and the hangman. It's about being in the present,
Right.
grounded in the present. So that's kind of where I am at this moment in
Hmm.
time. And of course, like life in the wheel, it's ever changing.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
Constant, constant. That's the one thing you can
Yeah.
always rely upon is change. It's always there, no matter what. And as
Yes.
you clearly said, resistance is just going to wear you out and make you irritable. And so learn how to flow.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, very
And
good.
then it's realizing too that I am a human still. And like today, I had, gosh, probably the worst day in probably a month or more. I just woke up with so much pain, and I was in so much anger and resentment and frustration of just being tired of ever being tired. So
Hmm.
yeah, it was kind of like a self pity party, panic throw out kind of thing. But also recognizing the fact that we are human and that we are allowed to have our emotions and our feelings and express them. So again, I think, like, for me personally, this walk in this lifetime at this moment, that's my journey. That is my
Right.
walk right now, is learning to allow yourself to be having the human experience. Know that you are more than a human, that you are a spirit, and having a human experience, and allow yourself to have those human experiences and don't be judgmental. So there we
Very
go.
good.
That's, I guess, the bigger message today I'm getting anyway.
That's a big one, and I think we need to expand that "don't be judgmental" to include ourselves. That's a big thing because we
Oh
can
yeah.
forgive everybody else, but dang it, we hang on to this stuff that we've worked into, yeah, all kinds of issues for ourselves.
Right.
So, and the
And the
thing about,
self-care.
oh yeah, definitely. We're not equipped. We're actually kind of taught from birth that that's wrong, isn't it?
Right.
That's
Exactly.
I just came to me. I just realized that. It's just
That
like,
it's
yeah,
selfish to think of yourself. Yes.
exactly, exactly. And it's totally backwards. We are learning
Yes.
so much about stuff that we were told that is totally backwards. And
Yes.
that infuriates me on some days because it's like, why? Why would they make up such a story? Um, so as you work your way through, and I'm asking you to go out on a limb a little bit here. When you do look forward and you are making your plans, which you are in the middle of doing a lot of different things. So as you look forward, how how does it how does it equate, how does it feel inside when you're putting things together? I mean, do you get a that universal kind of nod that says okay, and the one that tells you to shy away from it? Do you still get those messages clearly?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Um it's learning not to necessarily try to figure out why you're feeling them, but to trust it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's that whole, like, there's three different ways to go home, right? And so maybe you go a certain way all the time because you enjoy the view or whatever. But this particular day, you're just like, no, I need to go this way. And you're not even sure why you went that way. But then you find out afterward, oh my gosh, maybe there's like a flooding across the water, across the road, or there was a bad accident or something. So yeah, I feel like oftentimes it's just learning to just step aside, really acknowledge the signs, and don't discard them. Don't try to figure them out. Just go with the flow. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm. So your message really hasn't changed from years past. You've just learned new ways of delivering it.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's more yet coming, which is really
Hmm.
interesting. I've gotten that in my own cards when I pulled them in the past, that part of this situation that's going on with my health yes, it's about expansion, but it's also about bringing in something new is coming forward. I'm not sure what that means. I don't know how that will unfold, and that's fine.
Hmm.
And I'm just trusting in it. So learning to be patient, right? It's like a kid at Christmas. Like,
Oh yeah.
what's going to be? What, why is this happening to me? That's difficult sometimes. And sometimes, you have to think, well, maybe it never will be. Just accept what it is right now and move on. Do what you can with what you have at this moment and know that that is enough. Oftentimes my messages come through for individuals, and yes, for myself, it's like I hear more often than normal, it seems, the phrase, "you are enough."
Mm.
So it's like this message that everyone needs to hear right now, that you are enough. So, it's like, know that you're doing all that you can do. It doesn't really matter. You have to just trust and release and not stress and do what you can do and allow what is to be, you know? So, yeah, that's kind of where I am.
Very good. You're talking a little bit, you just touched on a subject that's kind of dear to me, and that is our personal divinity. And that goes hand in hand with you are enough. You don't need to be anything beyond what you are. And
Right.
that's a tough one to accept for lots of people. It's not just us.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of people out there struggling with that. So now
Yeah.
this platform that we're using right now, the Zoom platform, has been uh, I've loved it. It has helped me because I'm not nowhere near in any situation like yours, but mobility wise I'm a little limited these days, and so this helps me to still get out there. And now with the virus that we're having around, where all these meetings and gatherings are being canceled and whatever, I can still do my gatherings because we don't
Yeah.
breathe on each other, so we're okay. so so
Right.
I thought, oh,
Exactly.
maybe I was ahead of the game once in my life. We'll see. But
No, I still think you are. You're very much ahead of the game, and it's a
mm,
need. And I find it interesting that it's coming through for you in the Zoom platform. And look how it's helped me, and for sure other people, to continue doing work. So yes, along I think the lines of asking me how has it changed. Yes, I'm not as mobile as I used to be, so I used to be able to work out of a shop every Tuesday and or Thursday. I can't do that anymore. I
right.
can't do that, number one, because the energy, the traveling, I'm not allowed to drive right now considering I've had seizures.
Mm,
So that puts a damper on my access and mobility. So yeah, being able to work from home, right? And through like a Zoom or social media platform is amazing. And I'm so grateful that this technology has come forward for so many individuals, so that we can feel like we're still part of society and that we're still,
right.
in need, and accessible, and not, rely on the basic ways of being accessible, going into shops, going to people's homes. I'm in a wheelchair, so I can't obviously
Right.
go to many homes, right? I mean, I can't
Hmm.
go upstairs. I do have like a little metal mobile transport that I can do, and it gets me up like 3 steps. So yeah, to some degrees, yes, I can still come and see individuals and go to stables and do those things, but most of the time I'm doing a lot of my work, over the internet, and
Hmm.
it doesn't make it any lesser of quality. It's just different.
Right.
So, and I open up to the universe to tell me what I need to do for that individual in that situation. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Now I know when I started
So I feel, I'm sure for you. I'm sorry, go ahead, Kevin. It's weird. We have that delay.
I was just saying, I know when I started, it just felt a little weird doing that, and it felt it. I guess my question was, how was it going to affect my reading? Would I be as able to read if the person wasn't right in front of me? And yeah, it is
Yes.
actually. It's in fact, you don't even have to see
Yeah,
them. You can do this on the phone as well.
I know.
So
It's crazy, isn't it? So again, that's a whole lesson of like learning about the tools, right?
right.
I often tell people like a theme or like a Ouija board or things like that. It's like people are like fearful. It's like, I don't get hung up on that. It's like a knife. Okay, you can use a knife to cut food and to feed you, or you could use a knife to do harm. It's about the person and their intent at the end of the tool. It's not about the tool. It's like the gun law, which I'm not even going to get into politics, but I'm just saying, it's like, is it really about the gun or is
Right.
it about the individual attached to the gun? Well, guess what? I think it's a little bit of both. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
don't underestimate your own physical power and your intent. And
Mhm.
yes, learning, to do these things over the internet. Yeah, my humanist, just like your humanist, came in to question, like, oh my God, is this going to be legit? I don't want to be one of those called, California psychics for
Yeah.
99 cents a minute. You know what I mean? Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just not me. And it's not how I used to work. So it
It's
was a
yeah.
hard pill to swallow.
It is.
Yeah.
It is difficult. Yep. And I've actually I looked at three different services like the one you just mentioned, and I've not signed up with any of them because it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like
Yeah.
well, first of all, my biggest concern is it doesn't feel like it's presenting much value for the client, because they're paying a
Yeah.
lot more than you think. So
Yeah.
yeah. So so when you
I've
deal,
had friends that I've met that have participated in that, psychic hotline thing. And for some individuals, I guess it's okay. But I'm more personable. It's weird. I like to say that I'm a bit of an introvert and then an extrovert. I'm that balance, right? I'm a
mhm,
Libra. So I have
same
to
here.
have that in between. I can't be just one or the other. It's very weird. So to each their own, right? And
Right.
and I feel like those individuals that go to them, they were called to do that, and that's perfectly fine. And
True.
nobody's judging anybody. So
Right. No, and that's true. I don't yeah, I don't discount anyone who does that. It just didn't feel right to me. And it just didn't feel like it was
same.
the place to be. So interesting. Um Now uh we're doing some live on Facebook, and you participate with that once in a while. Um when you Is that something you want to do? You want to play with that, or is that
Doing like a live,
yeah.
like how you've had other readers interview and do things like that, you mean?
Well, or doing
Or
a
do like a live session?
do a live show for yourself. Is that something you would be interested in
Oh,
doing?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure, I kind of played a little bit with
Hmm.
that myself one day on Facebook. I was just like, I'm not a big techie person. So I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm going to try this. And so I just like came in my little healing room where I am right now,
Hmm.
pulled out a card deck that I felt drawn to pull, and just, got on there live and just, saw if anybody would tap in and pull random cards just like how you do. And it was very interesting. I didn't have many people, and that's fine because it wasn't like, I announced this grand announcement or have like this page. It was just my own personal like healing page.
Right.
And yeah, it was interesting because I thought, wow, this is very random. I don't even know who's going to be watching, who is watching, how this is going to work. And so to just randomly pull a card, like I'm sure you've done, this is a card for the group. And it's crazy, like how, much it taps in and how relevant it is. And it's
Right.
such a huge huge lesson for me personally to see and witness and be part of, So again, I find it very amazing that yes, you and I, amongst others, will come into situations where it puts you in a totally different work type environment
Yeah,
where it makes you question your ability, right?
yeah.
And your validity. So again, we're learning, right? So I'm
Right,
grateful that we have this and that we have our little group of like souls and like minds where we can support one another and grow. So
right.
thank you for this.
That's good. Well, great.
And yes,
Thank you.
I would be totally interested in doing that. So
Okay. Well, maybe we'll figure something out. We'll plan something we could do in tandem to whatever. Then you could take it off and
yeah,
do whatever you want with it for sure.
we could do it fair online. Who knows?
Those have been done. Those have been done. So
Right?
now I just as you were setting up, and I noticed you said you were in your sort of retreat area. Um,
Uh-huh.
what is your favorite tool when something confronts you or someone comes up with a difficult question? What's the first tool you reach for?
Sure. Well, how I have my healing space set up, I have my Reiki table. I have my oracle cards. I'm not a tarot reader. I just don't find that calling for me comes naturally. So I just don't use that personally for outside people. I use my oracle cards. I use my crystals. I always have to have crystals. I typically hold a type of crystal that I'm drawn to. I tap in before I do the session for the individual, and I just open up to the universe and I ask, what tools do I need to have, if any? And I prepare in that space. I light the candle and I pretty much say a blessing and set my environment up ahead of time, even if the individual isn't here.
Right.
That's kind of how I work. And that's just how it is. Sometimes, like I say, it'll be more of a healing session where I won't get much as far as like vocal messages, but more healing energy will come through, and the individual will maybe notice that and comment, "Oh, I feel warmth," or I'll ask a question like, "Are you having problems in your knee?" or things like that. So it's interesting for me because somebody might contact me wanting to hear messages, and really what they're needing is more healing energy.
Right.
So the universe will give me a few messages to give that individual, maybe to satisfy them, but the healing work is more what they really truly needed, and so that's where my energy focuses on, and I share them, with the individual. I share that, okay, I'm using this crystal and I'm placing it here because of this reason, and like
Mhm.
they will give me that information and I share it. It's often interesting earlier when I was learning, because there's so many minerals in the mineral kingdom, right? To
Mhm.
know all the crystals in the universe, and we're constantly discovering them. Like animals, we're constantly discovering animals.
Right.
So it's okay to not necessarily know the correct term of what that mineral is or the properties of that mineral. So I just like tap in and I visually see it, or I might physically feel that I have it in my space and I'll grab it and I'll place it wherever they tell me
Mhm.
to, because it removes my human side. You know what I mean? So I guess kind of that's how it works for me. And those are the tools that I tend to use more often with my work, are the crystals. And, I often ask people, do you have any allergies? Are you okay with essential oils? Sometimes I use like an essential oil spray, or I'll sage my space. And so and I have cats, so I try to get that information before the individual comes to my space,
Mhm.
so that they're they're prepared and I'm prepared. And so I feel like oftentimes doing these online sessions, I don't have to deal with that. I don't have to worry about,
Right.
is the individual going to get lost getting here? Are they going to have a reaction to my animals? Blah blah blah. So it's the
Good
pros
point.
and cons, right?
Right.
So
No, good point. That's it actually simplifies the process in the long run.
Yeah.
So very good.
Yep.
So, well, Amy, we've covered a lot of ground and we've talked about a bunch of different things today. So, is there a parting thought you would like to leave with everyone as to how you're looking at, well, let's see, how are you looking at the next couple of weeks or couple of months?
Well, we are in the process of building the downstairs that we're getting ready to move into, and honestly, it's probably not going to be ready till like June or July for us to be in the process of actually moving in. So I'm not going to let that hinder anything. So I'm available. That's just how I put it. It's like I'm open, I'm available, and I'm willing, and whatever happens will happen. I can, like I was saying about, I do intend, with this move, I know where I will be. I know that I'm going to be closer to the woods, which my soul is craving. And I feel like I will be able to do a lot more maybe outdoorsy things. And so in the future, I would love to have like a group of, small group of individuals maybe that would like to get together when, there's like a solstice or some kind of Sabbath or something, and go out in the woods and just, have fun, not worry about, well, are you credited, what's your ranking and all that nonsense. I just feel like souls getting together and setting forth a purpose of an intent in a positive way and putting our souls together, and that intent together magnifies that energy, and it would be super to be able to do that. So that's what I'm really looking forward to, and to basically be of service to others. So, if it feels like you're drawn to me for whatever purpose, or reading for yourself or your animal, please don't hesitate to contact me and worry about, if I'm willing. If I'm willing and able, I will definitely help you out. So thank you,
Very good.
Kevin, for like communicating with me and spreading, my contact out and about.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
blessings to all.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. And thank you for joining us for this episode of The Oracle Scroll. Any questions, comments, or anything at all can be forwarded to us at theoraclescroll@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Also, you may check kevinwalder.com for any further information on the work of your host. And we appreciate you being with us and hope you will spread the word, let your family and friends know how much fun it is to attend the Oracle Scroll. See you next time.